Hello, welcome to another edition of the Pace Report. I'm Brian Pace, reporting live here at the Blue Note here in New York City. Blessing the band stage for an unprecedented week of sold-out shows is trumpeter, band leader, and now chief Christian Scott Atunde Ajua. Now, as you might know, for over the last decade, this gentleman has taken fusion and combined it with the elements of all kinds of black American music by way of Africa, trap music, R&B, hip-hop, as well as straight ahead and traditional jazz. And he calls it stretch music. Now, over the last decade too, this gentleman has had a hodgepodge of musicians to make up his band. Now, in addition to him being a successful leader, he's also composed, but also is giving back as a chief in his native 9th Ward in New Orleans. Tonight here on the Pace Report, you're going to see his new reincarnation of his band, as well as we're going to sit down and reflect and talk about his role as Chief Atunde Ajua, as well as reflect on the music that he's compassionate about playing for his music, for his fans. So sit back, relax, and enjoy highlights of trumpeter, band leader, and chief Atunde Ajua, Christian Scott, live here at the Blue Note, here on the Pace Report, here in New York City. explain to me this brand new instrument?
Oh, yeah.
Like COVID had you pretty much busy.
Yeah, man, I was running the entire time and trying to figure out, some new sounds, how to develop some new methodologies for the next iterations of these bands. And, being from Louisiana, blues isn't really important to us. And so I started to dig in deeper to sort of ethnomusicological studies of specifically Malian music and some of the music that eventually made its way due to the transatlantic experience of African descended Americans to the Mississippi Delta. So I wanted to try and build something that kind of had, ancestral memory built into it. So the idea is to be able to build these to give them to and to eventually have them all over New Orleans, so that the kids in New Orleans can learn to play instruments that are a little bit different than the modern Western correlatives that we learn to express on that. So they can play instruments that have their grandfathers and grandmothers' hands in them, and then to see what that creates.
Now, I sat through 4 sets of this. Okay. There's that version and you have the acoustic version.
Yep,
now,
absolutely.
Was there any difference?
Oh yeah, the tuning's different. Yep.
How?
The tuning's different. So this one, the bottom octave of it is built like a Kamala Ngoni, right? Young man's heart, right? Hunter's heart. The top half is built more like a kora. That instrument is really built more like a traditional Ngoni, Dansu Ngoni. So just 2 octaves of that, so more like Kamala.
I'm gonna call you Chief now.
Okay.
Because that's what you are.
Yes, sir.
The thing that we have to do, and this is, I've noticed in COVID, we've got to change the narrative on so many different levels and myriads, especially the learning part. Yeah. And stretch music is your interpretation of what fusion is right now.
Yeah, 21st century fusion.
Right, right. And there are going to be some people that are not with this, but tonight, and you sold out every show for the last week. Yeah. Apparently people are digging this.
Oh yeah, they love it. The ones that love it, love it. The ones that don't, haven't listened.
And the crazy thing, the crazy thing is, this is not a stretch from what Miles was doing with the rock in the 70s. This is an amalgam.
It's a recapitulation. If you're paying attention, and I know you are, everything comes in cycles.
Right.
And it's for us, it's like Miles is a great influence, right? But also, so is Sidney Bechet, right? And so, Jelly Roll Morton, these are people from the beginning of the music, right? They spoke about Africanity in this music as well, and so the only thing that we're doing is just continuing their work, the great Randy Weston's work, these kinds of pillars, Don Cherry's work. So, it's I always learn that it's up to us to try and impart as much of this information to the next generations. And I learned a considerable amount of this stuff in New Orleans, Louisiana, growing up, because it's obviously deeply maybe the most African city in the West, really, in the Americas. And learning all of the things that I learned growing up, I don't want to leave here without imparting some of those lessons to the younger musicians. So in terms of continuing those folks' legacies, that's really the most important thing to me. When I think about a person like Don Cherry and what he contributed, and a lot of people are no longer calling his name, but I'm
even on that Coleman, we're not even
right. Yeah, I mean it's people are starting to leapfrog some of the greatest pillars in this music because it's not something that's being marketed anymore. So our idea is to try and tether what we're doing to their contributions. So it also gives folks that are coming into their learning of this music a rationale to go back and investigate the things that they did.
During this time off, these 18 months, what have you done as far as shedding? Are you writing better, or are you playing better?
Everything is every day you get up and you chew a little off. It's like the idea for me is to just try and every night to better my best, right? And so if I get a night where I feel like I'm really on, and the next time I play, I'm firing at that target. So I just think it's about developing in a way also where you can impart the information, right? So it's like one thing to just get better, but to develop a comprehensive understanding of what it is that you're doing, so that you can also impart the things that allow you to get better to the younger generation. supreme goddess to our world, contained only within the confines of her melanated body, the divinely encrypted mitochondrial information requisite to create all man. Black woman, reflection of cosmic radiance, incandescent earthly mother and mirror to our universe, birthing all color. The credulous condemned her, believing her to be as baseless as the phallic gods conjured to replace her. She is the unyielding, unrelenting, undying, unbroken mother of all who came to be.
Something that I've noticed, and this is the third incarnation of the band, because I've seen
multiple ones.
Yeah, I've seen multiple ones. Mm-hmm. Tonight, Elena.
Oh yeah.
She's bringing a very different voice.
Right.
Your saxophone.
Maturing. She's older.
Yeah. I noticed your role as a band leader has changed now. It's like you're giving them more leeway and flexibility.
They can go off. Yeah.
How did that happen?
As I get a little bit older, I'm starting to understand the import of allowing them a space to actually express, right? Because the scene is different now than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago when I first started touring. Certainly different than it was 40 years ago, 50 years ago. And a lot of the younger musicians don't have the ability to play with master level practitioners anymore. Like more often than not, it's like babies start their own bands with babies, and they don't actually apprentice. And I was really fortunate, obviously, to come up with my Uncle Donald, who's obviously a great master and legend of this music. But because of that relationship and touring with him, I was able to play with other master level practitioners like Luque, like Eddie Palmieri, these kinds of folks. And they were so warm and open with their information. Folks like me or Luque, Lawrence Fields, play with Joe Lovano and Tane Watts, all of these folks. Even though we're in our late 30s now, I'm 38 now, Luque, all three of those guys 38, Weedie Braimah 39 years old, we're the elders now, right? We're just the babies. But it's like you snap your fingers and now we're the older ones. So it's on us to make sure that we strengthen the tendons of the relationship between the younger generation and what's going on. Right? It can't be incumbent on them to figure that out because they're babies, So that being a focal point of the newer band, I've been trying to figure out, they get a lot of training and rehearsing and sharpening and different things. But, this is an extension of like a jazz messenger's energy. Miles is great bands because he always brought in younger talent to develop, But this is how the music survives, and that's part of what we're up to.
You said something very, very important in one of your shows is that every time you play like you're playing the drum.
Yeah.
Whether it's a trumpet or...
Yeah, everything's a drum. Mm-hmm.
Explain that concept, because not too many
that's
people...
James Brown.
Right.
And we like to get down as much as, obviously the jazz thing, so people's heads a lot of times gets wrapped up into the conceptual elements of the tenets of what you're doing, and it being kind of, do I understand it? And is that cool that I don't? This kind of energy shows up in jazz clubs a lot. But for me, you also can't lose the swing and the funk of it. So the idea is that every time that I approach these instruments, that I'm also thinking as rhythmically as I am harmonically or melodically, because that is ultimately for me the more important tenet to be able to impart to the younger generations, the language and rhythm, right? It's like the way you say something, right? We know like black people could say, all right now, that could mean 10 different things.
Right.
It's just a small, all right now, changes it. Now it's small, but it doesn't matter what hood I go to in America. One might mean like, all right, stop playing with me. The other might be like, get down, you're looking good. They have to learn those things, and those are rhythmic tonal things. All of these things are really nuanced. So in order for them to get it, I can't always play in the way that I want to play or I hear, because we're also teaching in this moment.
How the band members approaching that on the band stage, and actually when they leave your band and go start, how are they are they carrying that with
They certainly are. You listen to Corey Fonville's band, Butcher Brown, I mean, you know, it's rhythms all day and really bad. I mean, amazing music. Braxton Cook's groups, the stuff that Elena and Samora are doing. These are the recent babies. Before them, Jamire Williams and Matthew Stevens, and, you know, Walter Smith and Thomas Bridgen, Esperanza Spalding. All of these people came out of this band first, right? The introduction to the scene, touring, was in this group, you know? And so I think even though we're younger or we appear in a certain space, there have been so many different iterations and generations of this band that has been incubating really cool conceptual music and then filtering that into the system in as many ways as possible through different groups. So that's been the real joy, is also watching, you know, some folks that started, like maybe a Walter Smith or Matthew Stevens, that peers in terms of our age ranges, but now to be able to see the ones that came in when they were 17, 18 years old and now they're 30 and have their own bands is also like the most awesome feeling, you know?
$18 everybody had to sit down and be idle. And around Christmas time of last year, I'm turning on PBS, and I'm looking at American Masters.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm saying, wait a minute here, I know this brother right here. They go to the Ninth Ward, and you're telling your story on how you became the chief, and you tell the story. You're a great orator, you're a great griot.
Thank you.
And you're telling everybody this in the audience, but you're also telling this on camera about the importance of what your grandfather did, and I'm noticing now that your grandfather is no longer here, how much have you carried that on the band stage, and how much have you carried you being a chief in your role in the community?
Right. Well, I mean, you never let go of it, and that's the thing. It's like he taught us to even if I wasn't chief, to still behave a certain way and interact with the world a certain way, right? So the title and the designation and people, following in that energy is a beautiful thing. But at the end of the day, if I was chief or not, I'm supposed to hold myself a certain way. I'm supposed to make sure to try and cast as much light onto everything that I see, because I'm aware of what this reality is, right? So, dealing with the younger musicians from a kind of chief space and standpoint is kind of interesting, because I'm seeing them develop a different kind of reverence than existed in younger generations before I was chief. And so much of the things that I saw in terms of my Uncle Donald, Big Chief, right? How we all dealt with him and all of these things, and it was like when you're younger, you're observing this, and it's like the way that people deal with him is this like godly figure, that kind of thing. Now it's turning into an energy that people are hitting me with. Honestly, it's a little weird for me. Makes me a little uncomfortable, right? Because I'm always silly Christian too, like at heart. You know me, I'm joking around all over people all the time, that kind of thing. So that's been a really strange and new experience dealing with the younger generation in that regard, because it's, there's some distance between me and them in their mind's eye now. That isn't always the most productive distance. It's for band members, right? Sometimes I need the drummer to say, yeah, I heard you, but I got to go in this direction. But in other moments, they wholly obey to the degree where it's not so helpful all the time.
Right.
Because I need them to express, but sometimes they kind of pull in their punches because they don't want to make the chief hear something he doesn't want to hear. So that part of it is strange. But your ear, not to cut you off. Okay. Your ears have always been open. Open, right? Yeah, but but it's the same for us when we were coming up. Once you get to a certain plateau, or they can hear certain things in your playing, the relationship is more, for lack of a better way of putting it, is just there's reverence there, right? So they don't want to overstep because of what they feel you have contributed, so they're honoring you more than they are dealing with you like, oh, that's just another dude I'm hitting with. So what we're trying to do is to try and create a reality where they have both comforts so that they can fully express.
One thing that I really admire what you did tonight, and the other nights I've seen you, and you do this, you tell everybody, the whole concept of going to a jazz club has got to change.
Yeah.
It's like you gotta take the suit and tie off. We gotta be.
I'm in my shoe right now, and
I'm in what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly. And shout out Kanye. But I'm just saying, at the end of the day.
Why do you think we've gotten to this point where, Blue Note is taking a risk in changing the dynamic and how they present the music?
Sure.
Whereas you go around the corner up the street, Smalls is not, right?
Yeah.
It's still, straight ahead, and if you go Dizzy's, it's corporate.
Right, yeah.
What are we going to have to do to change that?
Well, I think it's good that we have all of these different coffers of expression. I don't think that the playing needs to change. I think there should be somewhere where somebody can hear somebody playing something that sounds like 1917. There should be somewhere where someone can come in and hear somebody that sounds like 3017, right? For me, that's the healthiest version of the music. The issue isn't that, to me. The issue is the perception of the music basically being framed in a way that says that unless you are of a certain level of cognition or a certain level of class, that you can't enjoy this music, which is wholly ridiculous, right? This music is rooted in the expression of a people that are arguably the most dynamic people on the planet based on their experiences, right? You're talking about people that went through this experience here and had to come through all of this and are still jockeying and fighting to actually be recognized and seen, firstly, as human beings. Let's just deal with the levels of that. Right, we're dealing with the Rittenhouse case and all this stuff this week, or someone can come into a space where people are peacefully protesting and kill a group of people, and because of the station that they hold in our larger communal space, the way that they're reacted to and the punishment for that is wholly different from if you do less than nothing wrong and you're born into other communities. So that the level of cognition that has to happen in a community that has to survive in an experience like this is going to create some incredibly dynamic music. Right? So it doesn't have to be one way or the other. The community is as brilliant and as get down as any other community. So if you can approach it from that space and just say, I'm going to experience something that is coming from a cultural perspective that is very dynamic, unique, and beautiful, then you have a good time. If you walk into it, you know, when you're tightening your tie and you're lifting up your glasses and you want to judge it, without having the ability to judge it, because you don't know what's actually going on. That's the other energy that's here too. That part of it is less positive and it's less needed, right? Because there's this idea that you know, the music is only for certain people in a certain class, and you know, maybe that has something to do with us trying to codify the music as America's classical music, and the fight. You know, the fight that happened in that time period to be able to get the music recognized for the level of greatness that exists in the music, right? The level of virtuosity that exists in music. But I think a part of that conversation was also rooted in cleaning certain aspects of what people's projections of what the music was that had nothing to do with the actual reality of the tenets of the music, its culture, and its practitioners.
And by a sidebar to that, the education system. Berkeley's, Indiana University, they've got to change the dynamic of how they present the music.
I think Berkeley is cool, to be honest with you. Berkeley is fine. There are other institutions that when you take a conservatory approach to trying to teach someone how to express the things that only come from you actually living those experiences and continuing to express, you run into a little bit of trouble, right? Because we're stamping these kids like, this kid went to Juilliard or this kid went to Oberlin, and therefore he can play because he's got a college degree. That has nothing to do with you being able to come up here and speak blues to me. This is a language. I'm just saying, right? And everyone starts off as a beginner, and they have to go through their own, you know, path. But this music, where it is rooted, it has its own rites of passage and passages and initiations, and it is a New Orleanian, primarily, firstly, language. So if what you're doing is not rooted in the core energy of those cultural spaces, and what you're teaching kids is something that comes from a chart that's on a sheet of paper and saying that you have to play this in this way and this note has to be perfect and that's what jazz is, then this is how the music ends up getting lost. Louis Armstrong, you never saw Louis Armstrong on a bandstand with a bunch of sheet music in front of him, right? So, and that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with learning to read. Like, you know, I play Western classical music, the Haydn, the Hummel, the Brandenburg, all these things. I learned these things as a kid. But the tenets of conservatory style learning are not wholly applicable to this culture of music.
And another sidebar too, if we really break down Louis Armstrong, Billie Holiday, dropouts, reform school, but they transform the world with their gift by being what we are.
Right, and the thing is that if we also being wholly honest about the world at that time as well, it's like somebody could have went to school and left school in the 6th or 7th year of school. That doesn't mean this is not a human being that is out watching, growing, learning, and has the ability to rivet or create the most dynamic contributions that anyone else can. They're just, their experience is different. Right, so I think that's also part of the mindset that has to change. Right, like you have to have certain commencements to be valid in our culture, in our larger space. But this is actually a ridiculous assertion. This is just one way to approach learning and growing and being the best version of you that you can be. But it's not the only way.
next?
No idea. Just a bunch of fun. Fun's next.
I know a lot of music's coming out.
Yeah, I got 4 records lined up for next year. So yeah, you already know. I've been sitting down, so I've been writing a bunch of stuff. And one record is called "Bark Out Thunder, Roar All Lightning." That's probably the first one, and it features this and the acoustic bow and me singing the, Louisiana Black Maroon blues, and so it's going to be. I think people are going to have a ton of fun with this record.
Well, the people left it with folk music today.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's some stuff in this set that sounds like everything from Bob Dylan to James Taylor, and, Jimi Hendrix. It's all there, So
That'll do it again for another edition of the Pace Report. I'm Brian Pace, reporting live here at the famous Blue Note Jazz Club here in New York City. I'd like to personally congratulate and thank the talented Chief Atunde Ajua, Christian Scott, for his time. Make sure you support his current live CD, which is Axiom, which is available on Stretch Music, Rope-A-Dope, as well as visit him online to find out his upcoming tour dates. Also, I'd like to personally thank the staff and management here at the Blue Note for their warm hospitality. As always, people, I can't stress this enough. Please like, share, and subscribe to my videos here on YouTube and Vimeo, as well as leave comments. Also, visit my website, thepacereport.com, for my weekly column, as well as my past segments. Until next time, remember, if it's in the groove, it'll make you move. Until next time, peace.